Hello, dear students. I am Dr. Shikha Pandey, Associate Professor from Institute of Aeronautical Engineering. Today, I'll discuss about the composting, their phases, and the factors which is responsible for the composting processes. In the previous lecture, I have discussed about the agriculture waste. It's as we know, agriculture waste is organic in nature. So, for organic waste, this is the best method to obtain compost from the agriculture waste, because agriculture waste is organic in nature. So composting is basically a microbial processes that will happen, causes degradation of, in which some plants and animal waste are naturally degraded to produce some organic manure. That's why this composting is much applicable on the agriculture waste, because agriculture waste is mostly they are plant and animal waste, and it can be degraded with a microbial activity by a lots of microbial processes, and at the last of it, at the last, organic manures is recovered. So this is about the composting, and this composting processes is involves with the microbial degradation of organic matters over a period of time. Means it is nothing, it is just an microbial degradation. We'll discuss about the whole processes in coming slides, because this what this microbial degradation, how it takes place, and how it is working, and which type of microbes are involved in this process, and what are the factors, and what is the important requirements for this composting processes. So we can define composting is like it is a biological processes that occurs under aerobic condition. You can see that the condition is very much important for this composting process, because if we will provide a good condition, good requirements, good nutrients, all factors, then it will be a good, then we can obtain a good compost from a compost by a composting method. So that the composting is a biological processes that occurs under aerobic condition, means the presence of oxygen with an adequate amount of moisture, temperature, and then only hygienic transformation of organic waste in a homogeneous and plant available material is possible. So first of all, it is an aerobic process, means with in the presence oxygen is important. Then some amount of moisture is also important for this organic composting processes, and temperature is also a most important factor for this composting processes. So that basically what we understand, first thing is it is a microbial degradation of organic waste, means those waste which is organic in nature can be degraded with this microbial activity. And second point is that some important factors are important for this composting processes. So first factor is that it is a aerobic means presence of oxygen is required. The next is the moisture is also a very important factor, and temperature is also an important factor for this composting processes. So now comes to the next point. It is, we call it as a nature's way of recycling organics, because if leaf fall from the tree to the grounds, so after some times what will happen, it will degrade and mix with the soil. So we can say that composting is a natural method of recycling of organics again into the atmosphere, bringing nutrients again into the atmosphere. We can say that it is a very simple thing. And next is that when you compost, you convert vegetable scrap, leaves, grass clipping, and other materials into a nutrient rich soil materials. Means what happened, all these are waste material like vegetable scraps, some leaves, some grass clipping, and other material that are nutrient rich, and that will again converted into the organic nutrients, some good humus or compost. So you can use finished compost in your garden and around shrubs and other plants to help them grow. Composting also reduces the amount of material that need to be disposed of, reducing those related costs. So these are the significance of composting. Composting is very much important, and compost you can use into your garden, into your kitchen garden, into your home garden to improve your soil plant quality, to get a good crops. And next is that it is going to reduce the amount of materials that needs to be disposed of, and reducing those related costs also. So that's why this organic manure is a very much cost effective, because it will free from chemical also, and free from chemicals also, and you can utilize any scrap, any vegetable scrap, any leaves, grass clipping, and you can convert it into a very useful material that is called as manure. So you can say that it is a process of conversion of waste to the resource also. That's why this composting is a very important phenomena. Now comes to the next point. This is about what is compost. So we can say that what is compost. First, we have understand that composting is a microbial degradation of organic waste, and then what is compost? So compost is a type of organic matters like leaves, straw, fruit, and vegetable peeling, and manures that can be used to make compost. So what are the things that is used to make compost? So first of all, it is a leaves, straw, fruits, vegetable peelings, and manures. They are used to make compost. Compost is made up of by vegetable peels, straw, fruits and vegetable peeling. So all these things makes a product that is called as compost. And compost will improve the structure of soil by allowing more air into the soil, that improves drainage and reduces soil erosion also. So this compost is very much beneficial for the soil structure also. By allowing the air into the soil means it will increase the aeration into the soil, and then it increases aeration into the soil, and reducing the soil erosion. So if aeration will increase, then the automatically soil will be compacted, and if it will be compacted, then erosion is not possible. Simply erosion is not possible. That's why this compost is very much important. Now comes to the next point. We'll discuss about the benefits of compost. So advantages and what are the benefits of the compost. So first of all, compost improves soil physical and chemical properties. This compost improves the soil physical and chemical properties. It acts as a binding agent for the soil particle. It acts as a binding agent means this compost act as a binding agent for the soil particles. Next is it increases the nutrient availability of the plants. Compost can reduce pest and disease problems in the soil. So these four are the factors that we can discuss about the benefits of the compost. Compost will improve the soil physico-chemical properties. Next is that it acts as a binding agent for the soil, and it increases the nutrient availability also, and compost can reduce pest and disease problems in the soil. So these are the benefits of the compost. Now next point is the we are going to discuss about the phases in composting. Means in this composting phases, which type of how much means which phases this composting has been divided. So composting is a biological process that occurs under aerobic condition and with an adequate moisture and temperature. Hygienic transformation of organic waste is a homogeneous and plant available material. So there are three main phases of composting that has been identified based on the temperature variation, besides a phase of maturation. So based on the temperature and other important factors, this phases has been divided. So first phase is the mesophilic phase. Next is the thermophilic phase, then mesophilic phase 2, and then maturation phase. So first phase is called as mesophilic phase, that is called as hot phase. Means this is the first starting phase of this composting process. So let's discuss about the mesophilic phase. When we'll put the waste into compost. So first, what will happen? The composting process starts at an ambient temperature, means normal room temperature, ambient temperature. In a few days or even some hours, the temperature rises to 45 degrees Celsius. That's why this is called as mesophilic phase, means it is a hot phase. So in sometimes the temperature has been increased to 45 degrees Celsius within fewer days or within hours. And then the with increasing temperature, the metabolic activity of various heterogeneous group of microorganisms increases temperature. This temperature is increased because of the activity of microorganisms and the metabolic activity of these heterogeneous groups of microorganisms. Temperature increases, and these microbes utilizes the nitrogen and carbon of the organic matter for their body assimilation. Means microbial, these microbes start growing, starts doing their activity into the compost, and these microbes are going to utilize the nitrogen and carbon of the organic material for their body assimilation. Next point is the decomposition of soluble compounds like sugar produces organic acid, and hence the pH is dropped up to 4 to 4.5, and the hot phases last for 2 to 8 days. Means depends upon the waste, these hot phases last up to 2 to 8 days. Means what happened when we put starts the composting, the temperature, initially temperature going to be increases because of this activity of this mesophilic bacteria. This bacteria starts doing their normal assimilation, normal metabolic activity, and by this activity they are going to utilize the nitrogen and carbon of the organic matter for their body assimilation. So decomposition of soluble compounds like sugar produces organic acids, and hence pH can be dropped up to 4 to 4.5, and the hot phase lasts for 2 to 8 days. So up to 2 to 8 days this mesophilic phase is there. This phase is also called as hot phase because of temperature is rises up to 45 degrees Celsius. That's why this is called as hot phases. Next phase is the thermophilic phase. So thermophilic phase is happen after this mesophilic phase. So what happened in this thermophilic phase, that is curing phase also. So when the temperature of the parent organic material attains temperature higher than 45 degrees Celsius, the mesophilic microorganisms are replaced by the thermophilic microorganism, mostly thermophilic bacteria, which has capacity to grow at higher temperature. What will happen in this thermophilic phase, the temperature has increased more than 45 degrees Celsius. So because of increasing this temperature, these thermophilic organisms has been reduced by some thermophilic bacteria, and these bacteria having the capacity, having the ability to grow at a very high temperature. These thermophilic microorganisms facilitates the degradation of complex matter like cellulose and lignin. In this phase, the cellulose and lignin has started degradation because of this thermophilic bacteria, and the conversion of nitrogen into ammonia by the thermophilic microbes results in pH rise of the compost pile during this stage. So what will happen? Nitrogen is converted to ammonia. Nitrogen is converted to ammonia. So this will cause increase in pH. So this will causes increases in pH. Means pH condition has been increased because of this activity, because here some higher bacteria are involved because they are working under more than 45 degrees Celsius temperature. So these bacteria are going to degrade the complex matters like cellulose and lignins, and the conversion of nitrogen in a mesophilic phase, you can see that only nitrogen is converted, and now they are converting nitrogen into ammonia, and due to this conversion the pH of the compost pile has been increases during this stage. So the conversion of nitrogen into ammonia by the thermophilic microbes results in pH rises of the compost pile during this stage. So now comes to the next point. This is what will happen during this thermophilic phases. High temperature accelerates the breakdown of protein, fats, and some complex carbohydrates like cellulose and hemicellulose, and the major structural molecules in the plants. And the compost temperature gradually decreases, and mesophilic microorganisms once again takes over the final phase of curing or maturation of the remaining organic matter. So after this thermophilic phase, high temperature accelerates the breakdowns of protein, fats, and complex carbohydrate like cellulose and hemicellulose, and the major structural molecules in the plants. And the compost temperature gradually decreases. This compost temperature gradually decreases, and mesophilic organisms once again take place for the final phase of curing, because temperature is now reducing. So because the temperature is going to be reduced, that's why the again mesophilic phase start. And this mesophilic organism, they will take over for the final phase, that is called as curing phase or maturation phase of the remaining organic matter. So after this thermophilic hot phase, high temperature phase, again this mesophilic phase will start, and this is called as a final phase or curing phase also, because this is the phase of stabilization. You can say that you can see the temperature increases up to 60 degrees Celsius, and after this again temperature goes down around 40 to 45 degrees Celsius, and now this is the curing phase, means this is the maturation phase. We can say that this is the maturation phase, because again they will start this mesophilic microorganism starts their processing. Now comes to the next point. This is about the parameters. What are the important parameters involved in this composting processes? So as we discussed about the phases of composting, how this thermophilic first this thermophilic will start, mesophilic start, then thermophilic, then again mesophilic condition will be there, and stabilization phase is there. So they are some of the important parameters that is very much important for this composting processes, because if we will get adequate amount of all these parameter will be fixed, then only we can achieve a good compost. Otherwise some impurities will be there, some pathogens will be there. So first point is the oxygen, that is aeration. Oxygen is a very important point, as we already discussed that it is aerobic. This composting is the aerobic process, means presence of oxygen is required. Oxygen is very much important. Next is the CO2. Carbon dioxide is also very important, and adequate amount of moisture is important. Temperature. Temperature is again playing a very important role in this composting processes. And next point is about carbon nitrogen ratio, CN ratio. CN ratio is a important ratio for this composting parameter. Next point is the pH and particle size. We'll discuss all these parameters in details in coming slides. So first we will start with the aeration point, that is about oxygen. So as we know that composting is an aerobic process. This is a very important point about this composting. Composting is an aerobic process, whole aerobic process. That's why oxygen is very much important. And this adequate amount of ventilation or aeration should be maintained to allow respiration of microorganism that releases carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. That's why proper adequate amount of ventilation or adequate amount of aeration is very much important to maintain, to allow the respiration of microorganism that is going to releases carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. The oxygen saturation level of the compost pile should not be less than 5%. Means oxygen amount should not be less than 5%. If we will not provide adequate amount of oxygen, if adequate amount of aeration is not there in the compost pile, then the compost is not a proper will get, and then compost will not be free from pathogens also. So excessive aeration level results in temperature drop and moisture loss by the evaporation process, and the low level of moisture hamper the decomposition process. That's why excessive aeration level means it is not much aeration also not provided. It should be less than 5%, because if temperature drop, if more oxygen is there, temperature will be drop and moisture loss by the evaporation process, and this damp kind of condition is created inside the compost pile, and the low level of moisture hampers the decomposition process. So this is the important factors that is related with the composting processes. So first this will be a discussion about the aeration percentage. If the aeration is less than 5%, then what will happen? This condition is called as low aeration condition. In this condition, in this condition, what a problem will come, like insufficient water evaporation is there, and that is going to generate excessive moistures and anaerobic environment. If it is less than 5%, means this is the loss of oxygen. oxygen loss is there. That's why this condition is not good for the aeration. So, and if it is more than 15 degrees Celsius, so it should be between the ideal condition. Ideal amount of um, oxygen should be between 5 to 10%. 5 to 10% is the ideal amount of oxygen inside a compost pile. If it is more than 15 degrees Celsius, then it is also called as excessive aeration. Means excessive aeration, what will happen? Drop in temperature and excess evaporation of water. Same process will causes here also causes the decomposition process to stop due to lack of water. So, what are the solution if this kind of condition is created or happens in a compost pile? So the solution is that the chop the material in order to reduce porous size and hence increasing the aeration. Moisture should be regulated by adding water or fresh material or with more water contents like fruits and vegetable, crops, grasses, liquid manures and other. These are the solution to if two type of condition will occur in a compost pile. If aeration is less than 15%, of if aeration is more than 15%. So in this, either it is a low aeration condition or excessive aeration condition. So what we should do, we should chop the materials to in order to reduce the porous size and hence the aeration. Moisture should be regulated by adding water or fresh material or with more water contents like fruit and vegetable crops, grasses, liquid manures and other. Now comes to the next factor. This is we are going to discuss about the moisture. So moisture, what will happen? The ideal level of moisture in a compost material should be 55 degrees Celsius, 55%. So the moisture ideal condition is should be between 45 to 60% range. So if it is less than 45%, so what happened? That is next condition will be created. This condition is called as insufficient moisture. In insufficient moisture, the problem will occur. This is called what problem? It will stop composting due to lack of waters for microorganism. Next, if it is more than 60 degrees Celsius, then that condition is also called as insufficient oxygen. And then in insufficient oxygen means what will happen? Because in this condition, too wet material is there, oxygen is displaced and can develop zones of anaerobic zone. Anaerobic condition will be created. So if it is less than 45%, this is again a insufficient moisture. So in what will happen? Due to lack of water for microorganisms, microorganisms will be lacking water. And if it will be more than 60%, then too much wet is there and oxygen is displaced. So as we know that composting is a very good process. Composting is a very much beneficial if it should be involved with the proper its conditions and proper condition, because at the end we are going to obtain a very useful material that is called as compost or humus, and this is very much beneficial. That's why the conditions is very much important, and this we should avoid in terms of to obtain a good compost. These kind of conditions we should avoid. So if insufficient moisture is there, then what we should regulate it, the moisture, either by adding water or fresh material with higher water content, like those fruits which are having higher water content should be added, or grass or liquid manures and other. And if it is insufficient oxygen, means like if moisture will be more than 60%, means a wet kind of condition will be created. So in this condition, turn the mixture or add low moisture content material with high carbon contents like sawdust, straw or dry leaves. So dry materials should be added like sawdust, straw or some dry leaves should be added into this insufficient oxygen condition. So there are two type of moisture condition is there. First one, if insufficient moisture is there, and if insufficient oxygen is there. If moisture will be more than 60%, this will causing the insufficient oxygen condition. So as we know that 40% to 60% is the ideal range condition of moisture for a good composting processes. So if lacking of moisture is there, then we should add some moisture should be regulated either by some fresh material with high water content, or if more moisture is there, then next condition will causes this condition is called as insufficient oxygen condition. So in this, what we should do, we should turn the mixture and add low moisture content material with high carbon contents like sawdust, straw, or dry leaves. Now comes to the next important factor, that is temperature control during composting. Temperature is also a very important factor for this composting processes. As we know, in a starting phase, temperature will, due to high temperature, thermophilic bacteria, mesophilic bacteria will start working, mesophilic microbes, and then in thermophilic, then again different microbes will start working. So first of all, if temperature is less than 35%, if it is less than 35%, then insufficient moisture will created, and the problem is that low temperature can occur by several factors, like by the lack of moisture, so that our microorganism reduces the metabolic activity, and therefore the temperature will be drops. So here again, what we should do, we should add some fresh material with high moisture percentage, fruits or vegetable waste or other. Next condition is that if insufficient material is there, because if it is less than 35%, if temperature is less than 35 degrees Celsius, these three type of condition can be occur. First is the insufficient moisture, insufficient material, or nitrogen deficit, or low CN ratio. So in insufficient material, inadequate pile shape to reach the appropriate temperature. So in this, what we should do, we should add some more material to the composting pile. Next point is a nitrogen deficit or low CN ratio. The material has a very high CN ratio, and hence the microorganisms are lacking the necessary nitrogen, because to produces protein and enzymes and slow down their activity, the pile takes more than week to increasing the temperature. So for this, what solution we can give, we can add some high nitrogen content material like manures to improve this kind of condition. So this temperature is playing a very important role in this composting processes. So if it is less than 35 degrees Celsius, three type of condition can be occur. First is the insufficient moisture, insufficient material, nitrogen deficit, or low CN ratio. Everything is connected because of this microbe activity. So in this, all these condition, what we should do, we should sometimes, if insufficient moisture is there, then we should add some dry materials like vegetable waste or sawdust. If insufficient material is there, then we should add some more material to the compost pile. Next, if nitrogen deficit or low CN ratio is there, when then add some high nitrogen content materials like manures. So these are the conditions, and the problem which is caused because of this condition and their solution, it is related with the temperature. Next point is the if temperature, next condition is also there, if a temperature is more than 70 degrees Celsius. So in this condition, what will happen, insufficient ventilation and moisture is there. If it is more than 70 degrees Celsius, some insufficient ventilation, no proper ventilation is there, and no moisture is there. So in this problem, what will happen, the temperature is too high and the decomposition is inhibited, since most microorganisms are inactive and die. So because of this high temperature, insufficient ventilation and moisture, the temperature is too high and the decomposition is inhibited, since most microorganisms are inactive and die. So what solution we should adapt to avoid this kind of condition? Turn the mixture and add high carbon content materials of slow degradation like wood or some dry grass, and to slow down the process. If temperature will be more, if temperature will be more, the temperature is too high and the decomposition is inhibited, since most of the microorganisms are inactive and die. Because to survive a microorganism, ideal temperature condition is very much important, because if a microorganisms will be survive, then only they can degrade or they can decompose the materials from the organic waste. If it is, the condition is not suitable for the survival of microorganisms, then this composting processes is not possible. So what we should do, we should turn the mixture and add high carbon content materials of slow degradation, means those kind of material we should add which is of slow degradation like wood or dry grass, to slow down this process. Next factor is the pH. pH is also a very important factor for this composting process. So if a pH is less than 4.5, so what will happen, this will causes excess of organic acid. Excess of organic acid is there if pH will be less than 4.5. So this problem is caused because of plant material like kitchen waste, fruit releases many organic acids and tends to acidify the medium. So, what the solution we should adapt to avoid this kind of condition? We should add materials rich in nitrogen until an appropriate CN ratio is achieved. If if ideal pH is there, then only a CN ratio should be achieved. Appropriate CN ratio should be achieved. Otherwise, no. If no CN ratio should be achieved, then that compost, that humus is not much effective, and that will be not homogenized, and this is not free from microbes also. Next condition is the if pH is more than 8.5. As we know that 4.5 to 8.5 is the ideal range of the pH. So if pH is more than 8.5, then the excess of nitrogen is there. So in this, what will happen? When there is excess of nitrogen in the source material with poor CN ratio related to moisture and high temperature, ammonia is produced and the medium is alkalized. Means this medium will be alkalized, like with increasing the pH, the medium will be alkalized, and there is an excess of nitrogen in the source material with very poor CN ratio related to the moisture and high temperature, and the ammonia is produced and the medium is alkalized because of the production of this ammonia. So in this condition, what we should do? We should add dry materials with high carbon content, pruning, dry leaves and sawdust. So these are the solution if this kind of condition will be created inside a composting pile during a composting activity. Because this is only, these are conditions is the main thing in the composting process. If we will not maintain the ideal condition for the composting processes, then the compost we cannot get a good compost. So next is the CN ratio. CN ratio is a very important parameter. So what are the ideal range of the CN ratio? First is the 35 ratio 1, 35 carbon ratio 1 nitrogen. In this, if it is more than 35 ratio 1, then excess of carbon is there. So excess of carbon is there. So what will happen? There is a large number of carbon rich materials in the mixture and the process tends to cool or slow and to slow down. So this condition is also not a good condition. So there is a large amount of carbon rich material, means more amount of carbon rich material are there and the process tends to cool or slow down. And so what we should do, what solution we should adapt for this kind of condition? We will you should add some nitrogen rich material until an appropriate CN ratio is achieved. Means if excess of carbon is there, then you should add nitrogen rich materials to achieve a perfect CN ratio. Next is the point condition is that less than 50 is to 1. Means if carbon is 15 and ratio 1, then excess of nitrogen is there. So in excess of nitrogen, if there is a high amount of nitrogen rich material in the mixture, the process tends to overheat, generating odors from the ammonia released. So this is the higher amount of nitrogen rich material in the mixture. So what we should do? We should again add some material with high carbon content. If carbon content is more, then we should add some nitrogen rich material. If nitrogen content is more or excess nitrogen condition will be created, then add some carbon content. So these are the solution. And carbon content and excess of carbon is there, add nutrient, add nitrogen content, add nitrogen. And you can see that the ideal range for this CN ratio is the 15 ratio 1 to 35 ratio 1 is the ideal range for the CN ratio. So this is about the perfect CN ratio parameter during the composting process. Next is the particle size. Particle size is also important. If the particle size is more than 30 centimeter, then what will happen? Excess of aeration is there because this particle size is more, no compactness is there, so aeration will be more, oxygen amount is more. So the problem is created because of this condition is that oversized material form aeration channels, dropping the temperature and slowing down the process. If oversized material is there and they that is causing the drop in the temperature and slowing down this aeration, this composting process. So the chop the material up to an average of a size of 10 to 20 centimeter. If it is less than 5 centimeter, if particle size is less than 5 centimeter, then compaction kind of condition will be created. Means what will happen? Two fine particles form small pores that fill with water, facilitating compaction of the material and a low flow of air, causing an anaerobiosis. So, what we should do in this process, turn or add larger particles to the homogenized one. And the condition to achieve this particle size is 50 to 30 centimeter is the ideal range for this composting processes. Now comes to the next point. What will happen? As we have discussed different phases related to the composting, phases and factors that are important for the composting. So if you want to obtain a good compost, if you go to any factory, they are making compost, you should don't touch the compost, because if they are not maintaining the proper temperature, proper moisture, proper particle size, proper CN ratio, then the compost is not free from microbes. Must be some microbe will be there. So first you should check out the composting conditions, factors, that they are providing it or not. If they are not providing a optimum condition, optimum temperature, pressure for this composting processes, then this compost is not much beneficial. So as we know, as we have discussed, like this compost is a very important phenomenon, because we are converting waste into a resource material, because compost is very much important. Composter play a very crucial role in improvement of the structure of the soil, and it is a, as we already know, that it is a biological process that occurs under aerobic condition with an adequate moisture and temperature. Hygienic transformation of organic waste into a homogeneous and plant available material. So these are all about the composting process, and composting different phases are there, and in different phases what are the important condition which is important for a composting pile. Because this compost we are getting, because we are using this compost again in our kitchen garden, and again in our agriculture field. If it is not much good, if it will be not free from microbes, then we cannot achieve what we want. That's why the temperature, the every phases is very much important parameters for this composting process. So these are the some of the references which I have followed in this lecture. So for with all these composting processes, phase transformation, I'm closing this lecture. Thank you for listening me. If you have any doubt, you can write it in the comment box, or you can mail in my mail id, shikha.pndy@gmail.com. Thank you for today's lecture.
Like, share, and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.